The day the younging Marquis's household came knocking and exposed me as the daughter who had been switched at birth, I made a decision in the blink of an eye. If I wanted to avoid being thrown out, there was only one thing to do. I dropped to my knees, wrapped both arms around my brother's leg, and wailed, "Brother, since we're not blood after all, I'll stay and become your wife. Why let good fortune leave the family?" Mother snatched the bamboo broom from behind the door and came for me on the spot. My hulking chief constable father, however, planted himself in front of me like a fortress, his eyes red. "Don't hit her, switched or not. This little tyrant was spoiled rotten by our own Chen family." Hey everyone, it is Xiao Yue family of modest means discovers their daughter was switched at birth with a noble household. The original soul didn't survive the shock, so a chaotic new soul wakes up in her body mid-scam, foaming at the mouth in the mud to steal her brother's hidden savings. When the Marquis's steward asks how a bloodline this refined produced that, her mother sighs. There can be no mistake. This child has simply been spirited since birth. Let's go. Barely the time it takes an incense stick to burn earlier. When the Yongning carriage stopped at the mouth of Peach Blossom Lane, I had been lying face down in the muddy courtyard, foaming at the mouth with great dedication, all to swindle the half-tael of silver hidden in my brother's pocket. My brother nearly lost his soul. He shook my shoulders so hard his voice broke. "Swear, don't die. I hid all the money I earned copying books in a clay jar under the peach tree. I swear, I'll give you every last coin." Before the words were out of his mouth, I sprang upright and shot toward the peach tree, clawing at the earth with my bare hands. Madame Feng, the senior steward from the Marquis's household, witnessed the entire performance from the gate. She looked as if lightning had struck her. Slowly, stiffly, she turned to Mother. "Madame Chen, forgive this old servant for speaking out of turn. But perhaps the Marquis's bloodline has been, probably, certainly mistaken." Mother pinched her handkerchief and gave two dry little laughs. "There can be no mistake. Your lady and I both gave birth in the same ruined temple outside the capital. This child has simply been spirited since birth." Then she strode over and twisted my arm in despair. I had no time for her. Dig, 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 half a tael of silver was buried down there. Mother finally reached the end of her patience. She seized the broom and hissed, "Chen Qinghe, I am counting to 3. My knees folded at once, I slid to the ground and clung to her thigh. "Mother, I was wrong. I should not have tricked brother out of his secret savings for the 123rd time. But he is far too easy to fool. Tell me, did you perhaps switch the children yourself in that ruined temple? How else could I be the only one in this family to inherit your brilliant wit and quick mind?" The good news was that a child truly had been switched that night. The bad news was that the unfortunate fool who had been switched was me. I was not the Chen's daughter by blood. The moment I remembered all the years I had strutted through the Chen household like a petty despot, my scalp went numb. When father and mother blew out the lamps at night, I would squeeze through the crack in their door with my little quilt and insist on sleeping between them. Father could only glare while mother drove him, with one look, to share the common bed with brother. And whenever brother finally saved enough for brushes and ink, I somehow persuaded him to spend it on roasted chestnuts from the corner stall instead. According to mother, the record of my crimes could have filled a court archive. Once pointing straight at my nose, she had shouted, "Chen Qinghe, if I had not carried you in my own belly, I would have tossed you into the back alley for the yellow dog long ago." Wonderful, the curse was about to come true. I gritted my teeth and pinched the inside of my thigh until 2 hot tears sprang into my eyes. Then I knocked my forehead against the floor. "Mother, brother, please don't cast me out. I'll work like an ox or a horse for this family if I must. I will repay every day of kindness you've shown me." Mother covered her forehead, unable to look at me. Madame Feng had passed beyond shock and entered a silence fit for the grave. Then I remembered all those romances about gifted scholars and beautiful maidens I had heard in the tea-houses. My eyes brightened. I seized my brother's wrist and, with the righteousness of a martyr, offered my magnificent plan to remain as his wife. My brother flung my hand away as if I were a ghost and stumbled back 3 steps. "Have you lost your wits, or have I?" Mother finally broke. The broom came down toward my backside. Madame Feng rushed forward and shielded me. Madame Chen, restrain yourself. This young lady is a cousin of the Yongning household. How can you strike her so? That offended me at once. I shoved Madame Feng aside and glared at her like a hen guarding her chicks. Who gave you leave to scold my mother? Madame Feng was a curious woman. Until then, she had regarded me with a cool appraisal of someone from a great household inspecting a country stray. Yet after I pushed her aside to defend Mother, approval flickered in her eyes. Perhaps she decided that, however wild my temper, at least my heart was loyal. At dusk, Father returned from his duty post in a rush. When he learned the truth, this man who could face a notorious bandit without blinking went red-eyed with panic. Swear is going nowhere. She stays with the Chens. I wiped my tears on my sleeve and finished what Mother had not said. Father, if 2 children were switched, then there is another daughter somewhere. Your true daughter. We have to see whether she has been living well. According to Madame Feng, Mother had been caught in a violent storm on her journey to the capital and went into labor in a ruined temple. By sheer chance, the wife of Minister Lin of the Ministry of Rights gave birth there that same day. In the confusion, 2 newborn girls, both wrapped in blue silk swaddling, were exchanged. A few years ago, Madame Lin passed away and entrusted her only daughter to her own family at the Yongning Marquis's residence. Only through another stroke of chance did the Dowager Marchioness finally uncover what had happened all those years ago. Madame Feng sighed. The Dowager originally intended to betroth cousin Lin Wanqing to our heir. Their birth charts were even taken to the temple of 10,000 Buddhas, but the old abbot said the match was right and the person was wrong. The Dowager found that answer troubling and ordered a full inquiry. That is how the matter of the switched infants came to light. I listened with my mouth half open. Heavens, is that abbot truly so accurate? Madame Feng? Could you ask him whether he can tell when I shall become rich? Madame Feng burst out laughing. And what? Cousin, would you call rich? I happily painted the dream for her. If I could spend 2 whole taels a year without anyone stopping me, I would be living in paradise. I could eat all the preserved fruit from Chen's shop, Granny Wang's crisp meat pies, and the soup dumplings beneath the bridge whenever I wished. Her smile deepened. If you are willing to return to the Yongning residence, cousin, you will receive 5 taels each month for your own use. 5 taels every month. My eyes nearly popped from my head. Mother worked herself to the bone running her apothecary and earned barely 2 taels a month. Father spent his days chasing criminals through rain and wind and drew only 3. If I had 5 taels every month, I could swagger through Peach Blossom Lane like a minor warlord. I immediately wiped the grin from my face, seized Madame Feng's hand with grave solemnity, and spoke as if accepting an imperial commission. Madame Feng, I accept this post. There is no time to waste. We should depart at once. Mother looked ready to split from the headache. Chen Qinghe, were you born without sense? You are not going to the Marquis's residence to take a post. You are going as the future wife of their heir. This concerns the rest of your life. In the end, my parents were too worried to let me go alone. They decided to accompany me to the Marquis's residence, judge the situation for themselves, and meet the daughter who had been lost to them. The Yongning estate was enormous. All carved beams, painted rafters, winding streams, and pavilions fit for immortals. I only turned my head for a moment to admire a bed of peonies in full bloom. And when I looked back, everyone had vanished. That was how I found myself sprawled over the carved railing of a waterside pavilion, swallowing hard as I stared at the fat golden koi below. A storyteller at a tavern once claimed that fish raised by princes and nobles could prolong a man's life if eaten. I smacked my lips. 2 would make a fine soup for the whole family. No, if I am caught, Mother will break my legs. Then I slapped my forehead as revelation struck. Wait, I am the future wife of the heir. That makes me half a mistress of this household already. If I stew my own fish, how can that be theft? I had just rolled up my sleeves to catch one with my bare hands when a voice as cold and clear as shattered jade drifted from behind me. Those fish were brought here from Jiangyan, 20 taels each. If you can pay for one, I shall let you take it. Half my body was already hanging over the railing. The ghostly voice startled me so badly that I tipped straight into the pond with a splash. After swallowing 2 mouthfuls of muddy water, I clung to the railing and hauled myself onto the bank. Only then did I see the man sitting beneath the willow shadows of the pavilion. Though it was early summer, he wore a thick cloak of pale moon white. He sat in a wheeled chair and had a face so beautiful and finely wrought, he might have been carved from white jade. Beautiful, yes, but frost lay over his brows and eyes. There was scarcely any warmth of the living in him. Furious, I tore off a withered lotus bloom and hurled it straight at his face. "Are you a cat? Could you not cough before speaking? Were you trying to scare me to death?" The dead lotus struck the bridge of his nose. Water sprayed across his face. At last a crack appeared in that immaculate mask of cold composure. His stare made me slightly guilty, but I could not surrender the field. I lifted my chin. "You look clever enough. Why didn't you dodge?" Without expression, he wiped the water from his face with a handkerchief. His long fingers tapped lightly against his motionless legs. "My legs are crippled. How precisely would you have me dodge?" I looked down at his wheeled chair. "So you truly cannot walk. I thought you were sitting in that thing for amusement, the way I used to." He stared at me as though I were some creature unknown to scholarship. There are people in this world who pretend to be lame merely to sit in a wheeled chair. I pointed proudly at myself. "There is one right here. I once pretended my legs had stopped working so I could escape calligraphy practice." Father felt sorry for me and built me a wooden chair with wheels. It was great fun. I did not mention the rest. The trick survived fewer than 3 days before Brother exposed me, after which Father and Mother joined forces so thoroughly that I could not sit comfortably for a week. To prove that I truly possessed experience in the noble art of wheeled chair survival, I waved at him. "Move aside. I shall show you how one dodges a hidden weapon while seated." One of his brows rose slightly. He seemed about to ask how a man who could not move his lower body was supposed to move aside by himself. I had no patience for such details. I stepped forward, hooked my arms under his, lifted him like a radish from the earth, and set him on the stone bench beside us. As I did, I offered my judgment. "You look tall, but why are you so light? Eat more." In this state, one street ruffian could fold you in half with a single blow. I heard him inhale slowly. The distant courtesy of a great house noble finally shattered in his eyes. I paid no attention. I dropped into his wheeled chair and exclaimed, "Your chair is marvelous. The mechanisms are far finer than Father's watch closely. If someone throws something at you, you do this." I let my body go limp and slid down the side of the chair like spilled porridge until I lay flat on the bluestone pavement at his feet. Looking up directly beneath his face, I instructed him in all seriousness. "Like this, do you understand?" He looked down at me from above. I glanced left then right and could not help admiring, "Your nostrils are remarkably round." He closed his eyes. A smile without warmth touched his lips. "You do not appear, especially blessed with good sense." I had just taught him a life-saving technique, and he dared call me stupid. I rolled my eyes. What do you know? The point is surprise. Once I slide down, I seize the enemy's ankle and pull down. He goes face first into the stones. To prove my lesson, I wrapped both arms around his leg and yanked with all my strength. Thud, he lost his balance exactly as promised and hit the ground, cloak and all. I dusted off my hands, stood over him, and thumped my chest proudly. Well, convinced now, is my technique not formidable? He lay flat on his back with his eyes shut, his chest rising and falling violently. After a long while, he forced the words through clenched teeth. "Grandmother has truly dug me a splendid pit. This betrothal will not survive." Out of kindness, I hauled him back into his chair and tucked the battered lotus flower into his hand. He looked so pale and gloomy that I decided life in this vast estate had probably not treated him kindly. In a burst of generosity, I patted his shoulder. "Do not fear. I am going to be the wife of the heir. Once my place here is settled, you can become my sworn follower. From then on, I shall see that no one in this house bullies you. his clear, glass-bright eyes fixed on me. His fingers nearly crushed the lotus. His voice was cold as well. Water. I have never heard of a lawful wife in the capital collecting sworn followers. I had always been gifted at speaking nonsense. Then I shall keep you outside the household as a secret lover. Either way, stay with me and you will never go hungry. A married couple on the next street had quarreled about such a thing a few days earlier. From what I overheard, a secret lover was someone kept in another house and given food. This sickly beauty looked pitiful enough, keeping him could not be much different. I waved goodbye and left him sitting there in stunned silence, gathered up my dripping skirts, and hurried away to find my parents. By the time I reached Shuan Hall, my parents' conversation with the Dowager Marchioness had nearly ended. There I finally saw the young lady who was, by blood, the Chen's true daughter. She wore a fine gown of smoky violet silk and carried herself with quiet grace. Intelligence shone in her eyes, and there was something in her expression that resembled mother so strongly it made my breath catch. This was Lin Wangqing. The dowager held Wangqing's hand with affection. I watched Wangqing grow up. She cannot bear to leave me. Madam Chen, since matters stand so, let us settle it this way. Wangqing will remain here at the Yongning residence. Whenever you have time, you may come and see her. By the sound of it, Wangqing had chosen to stay. Before we came, Mother had said, "Our house can feed 2 daughters. You may each choose for yourselves." It seemed Wangqing had chosen wealth and comfort. Mother saw me enter soaked from head to toe and immediately came over to jab a finger against my forehead. "Where have you been running wild? If you catch a chill, you will spend 3 days whining until your brother buys you candied hawthorn again." After scolding me, Mother turned to the dowager with just the right measure of apology. "Dowager, might we borrow a room so this child can change into something dry?" The dowager nodded and asked Wangqing to take me to the inner chamber halfway through the covered corridor. Wangqing suddenly stopped. She turned and looked at me quietly. "Do you think I refuse to return with your parents because I have stolen your place? That I am an ungrateful creature who covets wealth and rank?" I had been staring at the creamy white jade bracelet on her wrist. "Number anyone would want a comfortable life. Your bracelet is beautiful. The stone is so clear. May I touch it?" Wangqing studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "Your mother said you were simple-hearted." It seems she spoke true. Inside the chamber, she not only slipped off the bracelet and pressed it into my palm, she chose the finest cloud brocade gown for me to wear. As she tied my sash, she said softly, "You resemble Mother, especially your eyes." I knew she meant Madame Lin, the woman who had given birth to me and since passed away. I thought about it seriously. When there is time, take me to her memorial tablet. I should burn incense and bow to her, and every year on the day she died, I will go with you. This time, Wangqing was silent for a very long while. Then she suddenly embraced me, her voice rough with tears. "Swear, there was something wrong about Mother's death. I must remain in the Marquis's household because I need its power and protection. I intend to find the truth and avenge her." "Oh, what?" I stared at her with round eyes and whispered, stammering, "Are we killing someone, burning a house? If the magistrates catch us, how many years would that earn?" Wangqing laughed through her tears. Seeing the wet shine at the corners of her eyes, I nodded solemnly and decided to form an alliance with her for this grand work of vengeance. It sounded far more exciting than robbing brothers' hidden savings. The moment we returned to the hall, I announced to my parents, "I have decided to remain in the Marquis's residence and enjoy a life of luxury." In truth, I was staying to accomplish great deeds with Wangqing and prove that the entire family was wrong to call me foolish. Mother narrowed her eyes. "Chen Qinghe, tell me the truth. Did Wangqing whisper some secret to you?" I sucked in a breath. Did my mother possess the art of reading minds? Father rubbed his stubble and pretended to admire the scenery. Mother glared at him. "This is your doing. I told you not to fill Swear's head with so many tales of wandering swordsmen. A perfectly good girl has read herself half witless." The dowager laughed and smoothed things over. "Then let Swear stay. I find myself very fond of the child." After some discussion, Mother and the dowager reached an agreement. I would spend half each month learning the rules of the Yonging household and the other half back home with the Chens in Peach Blossom Lane. That should have settled everything. Instead, Madame Feng entered and reported quietly, "Dowager, the heir received an imperial order half an hour ago and has already left the capital on official business. We do not know when he will return." The dowager thought for a moment, then turned to Mother. "Madam Chen, I shall speak plainly." The abbot at the Temple of 10,000 Buddhas examined the birth charts and declared that Swayer and my eldest grandson are a heaven-made match. My grandson's duties kept him from meeting her today. But as for the betrothal, Mother sat bolt upright. "Dowager, Swayer is simple-minded in these matters. All she understands is food, play, and whatever catches her fancy. She has not begun to comprehend the affections between a man and a woman. To speak of marriage now is far too hasty." Father panicked too, and for perhaps the first time in his life dragged out the formal words. "I have heard the heir is young yet highly favored by his majesty and commands the Chilling Guard. His rank is lofty. Our Swayer has been raised too freely. The gates of your house stand too high for us. I beg the dowager to reconsider." That was not what Father had said at home. His exact words were, "Those princelings and noble sons are all stuffed with concubines and rotten schemes. Our Swayer is not going anywhere near that nest of trouble." Madame Feng leaned to whisper in the dowager's ear. The dowager's eyes gleamed. Then she sighed with elaborate regret. "What a pity. My grandson's court is in want of someone trustworthy to oversee his private coffers. He owns restaurants, silk shops, and pastry houses that earn silver by the cartload, but no one close to him has a good head for the ledgers. I had thought Swayer, being quick with figures, might take charge." I had been picking at my fingers in boredom at once. My ears pricked up like a hound's. Madame Feng added at exactly the right moment, "Indeed, whoever helps the heir manage those holdings would have 20 taels every month for personal expenses." "How much?" 20 taels. With 20 taels a month, forget Peach Blossom Lane. Every young rogue in the southern quarter of the capital would be trailing after me, calling me their chief. Mother knew me far too well. Her face changed. She lunged to cover my mouth, too late. I sprang onto the armchair with impressive agility, held one hand out to keep her back, and shouted, "I agree, I accept the betrothal." The dowager struck while the iron was hot. "Excellent. Bring the betrothal papers. We shall settle it now." Seeing the matter already beyond rescue, Mother rubbed her brow and laid down 3 conditions. First, if the heir ever gave his heart to another woman, the engagement would end at once. Second, if Swayer later found the marriage unsuitable and refused it, the Yonging household would not force her. Third, the heir was never to take a concubine. If he did, husband and wife would part cleanly. For a noble house. These terms were severe. The dowager accepted every one without blinking. Before leaving, I was still dizzy from the glorious promise of 20 taels a month. I happily escorted my parents toward the gate. The instant we stepped beyond Chuan Hall, the servants of the Yonging residence heard shrieks fit for a slaughterhouse. "Mother mercy! I know, all things in moderation. I remember, not the ear. That hurts." In the end, Wenqing arrived just in time to save me from Mother's claws. My parents looked at Wenqing with expressions too tangled for words. I rubbed my burning ear, took her hand, and told Mother with great seriousness, "Do not worry, I will take good care of elder sister." Mother turned aside and wiped at the corner of her eye. Then she tapped my forehead. "If anything happens here, speak with Wenqing before you leap into it. Do not rush headlong into trouble." "I will come for you in half a month," Father hurried to add. "I will come too, and if you miss home before then, have the gatekeeper harness a carriage and come straight back." After finishing with me, Mother looked at Wenqing, and her voice softened until I scarcely recognized it. "Wenqing, I asked Madame Feng just now, and heard that you favor green. When I return, I will sew you a green suzhou embroidered quilt. I will leave it in the sun until it is warm and soft, waiting for the day you come home to sleep beneath it." Father rubbed his hands together. "And I heard you like quiet. Our house is not as grand as this one, but I will clear the quietest room for you." I will find good timber for your desk and furnishings too. Wang Qing's lashes trembled. She said nothing, only bowed to them with perfect formality as a daughter should. My parents left, turning back every few steps. As Wen Qing and I crossed the corridor, I slipped one of the silver bracelets from my wrist and fastened it around hers. Elder sister, this is not worth much. But mother and father went to the temple of 10,000 Buddhas and bowed at every step to pray for these bracelets as charms of peace. I am giving you one of mine. Wear it in Peach Blossom Lane, and everyone will know you are my true sister. I promise no one will dare trouble you. Wang Qing lowered her head and still did not speak. I was wondering what I had done wrong when something warm and wet struck the back of my hand. I looked down. Wang Qing was biting her lip hard while tears fell one after another onto my skin. I panicked and pulled her clumsily into my arms, patting her back. Elder sister, don't cry. I will stay here. I will keep you company. She buried her face against my neck. Her voice was so small the wind might have scattered it. I thought after mother died, I no longer had a home. Sweeter, thank you. I tightened my arms around her and said nothing. She was the daughter my birth mother had carried for 10 months. I was the cherished daughter of the parents who had raised her birth mother. We shared no blood, yet between us rested the weight of two mothers' love. I understood the look my parents had given Wang Qing. It was love mixed with a careful desire to make up for lost years. They never once asked me to yield anything because they feared I would feel cast aside. But I was willing to love Wang Qing beside them. Love was not a well that ran dry when shared. It was spring water. The more that gathered, the deeper it became. 20 taels a month mattered, of course, but helping my dead mother care for the sister who had suffered in her absence mattered more one morning. I pushed open the window and found a thin white frost over the plants in the courtyard. I yawned and realized with a start that since I entered the Yongning residence, spring had turned to autumn without my noticing. Wang Qing came in carrying a food box. When she saw I was awake, a gentle smile touched her eyes. Wash up. Brother brought medicinal porridge mother made herself. It is still warm. We should eat it while it is hot. At some point, Wang Qing had begun to say mother and brother, as naturally as if she had used the words all her life. At first I found it surprising once. While ladling porridge into my bowl, she explained calmly, "No one knows what tomorrow will look like when we wake. If heaven has returned a family to me, then I mean to hold fast to it. Every day earlier that I call them mother and father is one more day I get to live as their daughter." With birds singing beyond the window, I watched her lower her eyes to her bowl and nodded thoughtfully. "Elder sister, I think I understand a little of what you mean by happiness." At that peaceful moment, Madame Feng hurried in, her face glowing. "Cousin, the heir will return in 2 hours. Should we not go to Kengshan Court and prepare to receive him?" I gave a wail and buried my face in Wang Qing's arms. Sister, I knew I should have rolled around in bed a little longer. If I had known the heir was coming back today, I would have slept through another dream and enjoyed a few more moments of this happiness. Madame Feng jumped at the noise, then laughed when she understood. Wang Qing stroked my hair as if soothing a child. "Come, I will go with you. The sooner we finish, the sooner I can take you into the market this afternoon." The heir's return was no small matter for the Yongning household. For more than half a year, Madame Feng and Wang Qing had taught me how to manage the ledgers and daily affairs of Peiji's court. Now the lord whose silver paid my stipend was returning. Naturally, the work had to be ready for his inspection. When I first took over, not a soul in the residence believed I could do it. Then I sat in the counting room, rattled the abacus beads under my fingers, and balanced the accounts faster and more accurately than clerks who had done the work for decades. They stared as though I had grown another head. I was excellent with numbers and could see through a ledger at a glance. In my free time, I could even run through a set of fist forms in the courtyard with enough force to stir the air. When the dowager stared at me in surprise, I thumped my chest proudly. Of course, I am clever. Mother always says that even though father, mother, and brother will stand behind me, and even though they have saved a dowry for me, a woman still needs real skills to make her own way. She need not master everything, but she should understand enough of many things to know which road she wants to walk. The dowager sighed again and again. Your mother is a woman of true wisdom. I seized Wang Qing's hand with pride. Naturally, anyone who gave birth to a sister as brilliant as mine must have excellent blood. The dowager even suggested that after some time, Wang Qing and I should attend the Ladies' Academy in the capital. I waved both hands in horror. I had heard about that place. Music, chess, painting, calligraphy, etiquette. Lessons enough to crush a horse. I was receiving 20 taels every month to learn real trade and household accounts. Why would I choose memorization and punishment over that? Though I refused the academy, I took my 20 taels stewardship very seriously. Before we left, I pointed at the medicinal porridge on the table. Madame Feng, have the kitchen make a pot of this for the heir as well, something to strengthen him and drive out the cold. Madame Feng smiled. As you command, cousin. After breakfast, our little procession went to Peiji's Kangshan court. We inspected everything. The bed curtains had been changed to a light bamboo leaf pattern. A full set of celadon teaware sat ready. The pebble path in the garden had been torn out and replaced with broad, even slabs of blue stone that would not turn treacherous beneath ice or rain. I scraped my shoe over one of the stones. Could one not simply walk more slowly when it snows, or avoid this path altogether? Why spend so much effort replacing it? Wang Qing took my hand, her voice cooled. Mother once slipped on a pebble path just like this at the Lin residence. She lost the child she was carrying. After that, her health never recovered. My heart sank. The mistress of the Lin household had been with child, yet servants had allowed moss to grow slick across the stones. Had it truly been neglect, or had someone wanted her to fall? Wang Qing had long said there was something strange about Mother's death. This was the first detail she had ever given me. I squeezed her hand and silently swore I would help uncover the truth. After more than 2 hours of work, I stared at the silver pouring out across the ledger and nearly choked. This unseen betrothed of mine lived on a scale bordering on absurd. Madame Feng, afraid I might lose heart, said, If the work is too much, cousin, this old servant can shoulder more of it. I shook my head gravely. Madame Feng, I take 20 taels every month. I must earn them. Mother says all things require measure. I may love play, but if I take a man's silver, I must see his affairs properly handled. To take the money and abandon the duty would shame the code of the wandering world. A maid came hurrying from Xuan Hall. The heir has entered the residence. Madame Feng brightened. Cousin, come. We should welcome him at Xuan Hall. At once I remembered my first day here, when I had toppled a pale invalid and his wheeled chair beside the koi pond. Wang Qing had once mentioned that the heir suffered a grave injury while on official duty and had needed a wheeled chair ever since. Damn. The poor man whose round nostrils I had mocked was the very lord who paid my 20 taels each month. I clutched my stomach and let out a dramatic cry. Sister Madame Feng, my belly, it is twisting like a rope. Breakfast must have poisoned me. I need to run back to Peach Blossom Lane and have Mother make me medicine. You go on without me. Before either of them could answer, I gathered my skirts and fled faster than a startled rabbit. If I ran quickly enough and never let him see my face, perhaps I could still keep my beautiful 20-tael post. Meanwhile, in Xuan Hall, the Dowager Marchioness studied the faint weathering still visible on Peiji's face and sighed with distress. You were gone more than half a year, sleeping under strange roofs, eating whatever the road gave you. Look how thin you have become. Peiji's expression remained calm as he wheeled himself forward. I made grandmother worry. Your grandson is well. His gaze wandered idly across the hall, yet he noticed every change at once. A soft cushion embroidered with a foolishly cheerful little tiger now rested on the daybed. A strangely shaped tea set sat on the table, ungainly to the eye but unexpectedly comfortable in the hand. Even the forehead band grandmother wore had crooked stitches that gave it a clumsy, almost childlike charm. It seemed much had happened in the Yongning residence while he was away. The dowager followed his gaze and beamed. You simply have not met Sweer. At first I thought she was only a wild little creature with too many tricks in her head. I feared she would never bear the weight of household affairs. Who would have guessed, give her a ledger, and she becomes swift as a blade. In half a year, She has already begun to carry herself like a future mistress of the house. At the words future mistress, Peiji could not stop the image that rose in his mind, a girl in pink, with a dozen useless purses dangling from her waist, drooling over his koi before knocking him and his wheeled chair flat onto the ground. That little bandit was to rule a household. His expression became difficult to describe, yet a smile flashed through his eyes so quickly that even he failed to notice it. The dowager did notice. "What are you smiling at?" His face froze back into its usual cold lines. Was I smiling? The dowager turned to his personal guard, Song Tao. Did he smile just now? Song Tao rubbed his nose and answered with the courage of a man approaching an execution block. Perhaps he did. To tell the truth, dowager, while we were away on duty, his lordship would sometimes sit alone and suddenly curl the corner of his mouth for no apparent reason. You may wish to become accustomed to it. The dowager nearly dropped her prayer beads. Had her grandson encountered some wandering spirit outside the capital? If Swear saw him brooding one moment and smiling at empty air the next, the girl might flee the engagement herself. At that thought, Wang Qing and Madame Feng entered. When the dowager saw that the noisy little figure was not with them, she actually felt a little relieved. She took Peiji's hand and warned him earnestly. "You were born with a lonely nature. That face of yours is the only advantage heaven saw fit to give you. Do not sit around freezing the room with that expression. If you frighten Sweer and ruin this good match, I shall not forgive you." Peiji's fingers unconsciously closed around the sachet at his waist. Inside it, absurdly enough, were several dried petals from a withered lotus. He lowered his eyes. "Grandmother arranged this betrothal without ever asking whether I wanted it." Wang Qing sat nearby, lifted her tea, and took a calm sip. "Your lordship need not worry. No one will force either of you. The dowager and my mother made 3 conditions long ago. If either you or Sweer is unwilling, the engagement ends at once." Everyone in the room called her Sweer with easy affection, yet he, her supposed betrothed, did not even know her proper name. His fingers tapped the arm of the chair. A strange irritation slipped beneath his otherwise even tone. "Sweer? What sort of name is that?" Wang Qing looked up, and her eyes cooled further. "Sweer is the childhood name father and mother use for her. Only those close to her have the right to call her that. Her proper name is Chen Qinghe. Chen Qinghe, green shoots rising from the earth, ripening into heavy heads of grain, a name full of life and hope." Peiji noticed Wang Qing's displeasure and realized his tone had been poor. He coughed lightly and motioned for Song Tao to bring forward the gifts he had carried back from Jiangyan. Among the finely wrapped boxes, one rosewood case stood out. When it opened, a piece of exceptionally clear imperial jade lay within, carved by a master into a delicate pendant shaped like a green ear of grain. The dowager and Madame Feng exchanged knowing looks. Madame Feng deliberately reached for it. "Your lordship is thoughtful. This old servant will place it in the dowager's treasury." Peiji frowned and pressed his long fingers against the edge of the case. "That is for her." The dowager struggled not to laugh. "For whom?" Peiji tightened his lips. A suspicious trace of red crept up the tips of his ears. He turned his face aside and refused to answer. Song Tao, watching his master's discomfort, with great interest, wisely changed the subject and launched into a vivid account of the assassination attempt they had survived on the road. "Dowager, you should have seen it. An assassin came straight at his lordship with a sword. Every guard nearby had been pinned down. At the last instant, his lordship went limp, slid right out of his chair, seized the assassin by the ankle, and pulled. The brute went down face first in the dirt. That was how his lordship escaped the blade." The dowager stared. She pictured the scene and could not decide whether to praise her grandson's quick thinking or pity the indignity of it. Wang Qing, however, went still. She remembered a certain person's solemn lesson in life-saving techniques, lowered her head, and pressed a handkerchief to her mouth. Her shoulders began to shake suspiciously. Peiji, caught borrowing someone else's disgraceful method, went dark in the face. "Song Tao, take me back to my court." Master and guard made their way toward Kangshan Court. When they passed the lotus pond, an elderly gardener was bent over at the waist, Carefully counting the koi, Song Tao asked, "Uncle Ding, why are you counting fish?" The gardener wiped his brow with a miserable expression. "Cousin Chen comes by every few days and stares at them as though choosing supper. I count them every morning. One night she will climb the wall, haul two out, and roast them. I know it." Peiji's face remained unreadable, but Song Tao, pushing from behind, distinctly felt the tension leave his shoulders. Farther ahead, several guards were dismantling a section of blue brick wall. Song Tao went to investigate again. There was nothing wrong with that wall. Why tear it down? One guard looked as though life itself had betrayed him. "Cousin Chen says the covered walks wind about too much. Whenever she goes to the counting room, she climbs the wall to shorten the way. The dowager feared she would fall, so she ordered us to lower it by 3 feet." Song Tao patted the man's shoulder in sympathy. The guard raised his face toward heaven. "Brother Song Tao asked Cousin Chen something for me. How does she avoid our patrols every single time? It makes the whole guard look useless." From beside them, Peiji said mildly, "I shall ask her when I see her." The words had barely left his mouth when the faint whisper of cloth cut the air. A flash of bright lake green skirt vanished around the corridor ahead. Before Song Tao could react, Peiji's hands drove hard against the wheels. His chair turned the corner like an arrow loosed from a bow. He stopped beneath the wall just in time to see the green figure vault lightly over the newly lowered bricks, land without a sound, and disappear on the other side with the grace of a cat. The whole movement flowed in a single silent breath. Peiji stared at the empty wall for a long time. Song Tao approached carefully. "My lord, what are you thinking?" Peiji drew back his gaze and lowered his lashes. His voice was so soft it nearly vanished in the breeze. "I do not know." It was not an evasion. He truly did not know. He only felt that the living brightness beyond that wall had broken through the long stillness of his world. It was almost painful to look at, and yet he could not keep himself from wanting to draw nearer. The peach tree that had somehow appeared before Kengshan Court flowered twice more. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. By then, everyone in the Yongning residence had grown accustomed to my existence. The strange part was that Peiji and I seemed to be playing the most perfectly coordinated game of hide-and-seek ever devised. I avoided him because I feared he would recognize the fool who had thrown him from his chair and cut off my stipend. He avoided me for reasons I could not guess. Under the same roof, for 2 full years, we never once met face to face. One spring day, Peiji returned from imperial duty and reached the entrance of Kengshan Court, just as a breeze stirred the branches overhead. Peach petals fell across his hair and shoulders. The court had once held nothing but solemn pines and cypresses. I had secretly ordered the peach tree moved there the winter before last. Peiji paused beneath it, remembering how he had happened to sit on the far side of the wall that day and heard me directing the gardener in great excitement. "Put the largest peach tree right in the center of the gate. Think of it. When spring comes and the flowers open, his lordship will pass beneath them in moon-white robes. The wind will scatter pink and white petals all over him. It will be magnificent. He will look handsomer than the swordsman in my storybooks." Now Peiji looked down at the moon-white robe he was wearing and remembered Song Tao's cry of despair that very morning when he opened the wardrobe. Merciful heaven! What has Cousin Chen done? Why are all his lordship's new robes moon-white? Without his noticing, the once lifeless Kengshan Court, and Peiji's entire existence along with it, had been marked everywhere by Chen Chenghe. He plucked a peach petal from his shoulder. His fingers passed over his unfeeling left leg, and the light in his eyes dimmed. The imperial physicians had said his right leg had largely recovered under treatment, but the damage in the left was too severe. He might never walk normally again. Once, he had cared little what became of his ruined body, but a careless remark from Song Tao a few days earlier had lodged in him like a thorn. "My lord, if you do not dislike Cousin Chen, why do you always lurk in the shadows where no one can see you, only watching her from afar?" Indeed, however vast the Yongning estate might be, 2 people could not fail to meet for 2 years unless both were trying. I was hiding from him. He, in his own way, had been hiding from me. The truth was simple. He cared about his leg far more than he admitted. He cared that this broken body of his was unworthy of a girl as bright and alive as the morning sun. With those thoughts weighing on him, Peiji let Song Tao wheel him into the dining room. The evening meal had already been set out. He lifted his chopsticks, then stopped. Across the translucent osmanthus cakes before him, 6 large characters had been scrawled in red syrup. "My lord, 20 taels, pay up." Song Tao leaned over, saw the message, and groaned. "My lord, you forgot to approve cousin Chen's monthly stipend again. The next time she sees me, she will carve me open with her eyes." Over the past 2 years, I had not only managed the accounts, I had also slipped Song Tao steamed meat buns and roasted chestnuts whenever I came back from the streets. Little by little, even his loyalty had begun to tilt in my direction. Peiji stared at the 6 characters for a long while. Emotion moved in the depths of his eyes before settling into stillness. He laid down his chopsticks. "Song Tao, go to grandmother. Tell her I wish to end the engagement." Song Tao nearly bit his tongue in half. "My lord, what madness are you speaking?" At that exact moment, a head appeared around the dining room door. I wore a goose-yellow spring gown and twirled a freshly cut peach branch between my fingers. "My lord, Lord Pei, are you here? May I come in?" Peiji's heart missed a beat. Slowly, he turned. His eyes met mine. Years had passed since our first encounter. The childish softness had left my face, and I had grown bright and graceful. The crooked little tiger purse at my waist bulged with preserved fruit and gave off a sweet fragrance. Under his sleeve, Peiji's hand clamped around the arm of his chair until his knuckles whitened. He forced down the sudden hammering in his chest and kept his voice as cool as he could. "Come in." Heavens, I thought, staring at him. A few years had made the sickly air even more beautiful. He was handsomer than the immortals in my treasured picture books. I pinched my burning earlobe. Did he still remember that nonsense I had spoken when we first met, when I offered to keep him as a secret lover? For the first time, we sat properly at the same table. Peiji picked up his chopsticks, set them down, glanced at me, and looked away so quickly it was almost suspicious. I assumed my presence was making a famously solitary man uncomfortable. For the sake of my stipend, I hurried to explain, "My lord, do not be uneasy. I only need 2 sentences from you. Then I shall go." From my sleeve, I drew a yellowed portrait and a copied travel register, then pushed them across the table. "I have heard the Chilling Guard has eyes throughout the realm. Could your lordship help me discover where the woman in this portrait is now?" Wang Qing and I had never stopped investigating my birth mother's death. Lin Zheng, that sly old fox, and his second wife, Liu Wanyin, had been cautious. It took us 2 years to find even this thread. From the symptoms mother suffered before her death, Wang Qing believed the old woman who prepared her medicine was the most suspicious person of all. Peiji looked at the portrait but said nothing. My heart began to drum. A favor required something in return. To a proud nobleman like him, being saddled with a betrothed raised in a narrow market lane must have been a burden. I gritted my teeth and offered the greatest sacrifice I could think of. "My lord, that engagement was only a whim of our elders. If it troubles you, we can always, I find it quite agreeable." "What?" I answered, before my mind caught up. "If you find it disagreeable, I can ask the dowager tomorrow to wait." "What did you say?" I stared at him. "Agreeable. In what way was it agreeable?" Song Tao stood to the side, fighting laughter so violently that his face twisted into knots. Peiji lifted his eyes to mine. Something I could not understand lay in those pale glass-colored irises. "Does Miss Chen find it disagreeable?" Well, perhaps I did not. I looked at his flawless face and felt an embarrassing flutter of admiration. Still, we barely knew one another. Wang Qing had told me that husband and wife ought to choose each other with mutual affection. Mother had said marriage was long ordinary and filled with small burdens. Only deep love could keep 2 people gentle through the grinding years. I did not yet understand what poets meant by a love engraved into the bones, but I was not about to hand my life away in confusion. Then I remembered that over the past 2 years, I had actually watched him often from the shadows. Once, during a downpour, I saw him sitting alone beneath a covered walk, playing the chin. His back looked so lonely that my heart hurt. I hid around the corner with a plate of cakes and listened until I fell asleep against the wall. When I woke, the rain had stopped, and a moon-white cloak smelling faintly of medicine had somehow appeared over my shoulders. On other nights, after climbing the wall back into the residence, I found that someone had quietly placed blue stone steps beneath my favorite crossing points. Even the sharp fragments along the wall had been cleared away. When I asked, I was told the heir had ordered it. And every month I took 15 taels from my own allowance to support a charitable home in the southern quarter founded by wounded veterans. Not long ago, its matron had seized both my hands and told me that the Yongning heir had sent 500 taels to repair the buildings and promised work in his shops and estates for the veterans' families. I had always thought of myself as merely a paid steward in his household. Yet when I looked carefully, Peiji's strange temper and all possessed a heart gentler than anyone would guess. So gentle that I had begun to cherish the quiet warmth of being indulged without ever having to ask. When I remained silent, the faintest curve touched his lips. He tapped the table lightly and drew me back from my thoughts. Then he cleared his throat and put on a solemn face. Or does Miss Chen have no wish to marry me at all? Are you merely waiting for the engagement to dissolve so that you may keep me outside the household as your secret lover? He truly remembered that grudge. I nearly jumped from my seat. How can a grown man be so petty? I heard from the dowager that when assassins attacked you, you used the very trick I taught you, the slide and pull. If we are keeping accounts, I am at least half your savior. Peiji looked at my flushed face. At last, a real smile spread through the depths of his eyes. He nodded with perfect seriousness. You are right, Miss Chen. You are my savior. He agreed, so readily that I had no answer ready. I scratched my head. No need for grand bows, a spoken thanks will do. Peiji handed the portrait and travel register to Song Tao and ordered him to investigate. Just like that, he accepted my request. The stone in my chest dropped away. At the same moment, my stomach made a loud complaint. Peiji naturally motioned for me to sit, then used the serving chopsticks to place a piece of crisp pork in my bowl. After the meal, Peiji insisted on wheeling himself out to see me off. A breeze passed through the courtyard. Peach petals drifted down around us like pink snow. Beneath the tree, I pointed to the branch with the brightest blossoms high overhead and looked back at him. My lord, would you break that branch for me? His hand stopped. He lowered his eyes and said nothing for a long time. I was just beginning to fear I had touched the wound he hid most carefully when he placed both palms on the arms of his chair and slowly, painfully pushed himself upright. He was tall and lean, his body swayed, but he stood straight, reaching upward. He caught the branch and snapped off the flowering spray. I waited 2 steps away with both hands held out, smiling for my prize. Peiji pressed his lips together and tried to take 1 step toward me. His left leg, still without proper feeling, would not bear his weight. He lost his balance and pitched forward. I did not scream. I stepped in and caught him firmly in both arms. The clean scent of peach blossoms came with him. I patted his broad back as though calming a startled cat. Not bad, you feel much sturdier than the first time I picked you up. All that medicinal food I ordered for your kitchen was not wasted, after all. Peiji went rigid and let me hold him. The peach branch was clenched tight in one hand. When he looked down at me, something wet and aching moved behind his eyes. His voice came rough and low. Miss Chen, my leg may never fully recover in this life. In this life. The words felt too heavy, heavy enough to steal the breath from the courtyard. I looked carefully at his beautiful face. You have no beloved, and I am grown now. Why don't we set the betrothal paper aside for a while and try courting one another properly? Peiji stared at me. His throat moved. And if, after trying, you find that you do not like it? What a strange question. A dozen possibilities sprang into my head. Perhaps he would decide I was too noisy. Perhaps I would find him too quiet. Perhaps he would meet some great lady who truly understood his music. Perhaps I would meet a wandering young swordsman willing to roam the world at my side yet. When I met those eyes filled with restrained hope, I could not say any of it. Merely imagining those endings made my chest feel tight. I snatched the peach branch from his hand and lightly struck the back of his fingers with it. Why are you always worrying over every possible road before we have even taken the first step? We are not dying tomorrow. There is a whole life ahead. Why torment yourself with what has not happened? It is settled. From today onward, we shall try. Then I turned and marched from the courtyard before he could see how hot my face had become. I had not gone far when I stopped dead. I had nearly forgotten the important part. I hurried back. Peiji was still standing where I had left him, staring at the hand I had tapped with the peach branch as though it held some profound mystery. When he saw me return, panic flashed in his eyes and he immediately hid that hand behind his back. I held out my palm with complete righteousness. My lord, courtship is courtship. Accounts are accounts. Kindly settle this month's 20 taels. Peiji stared at my open hand. A moment later, a low, rich laugh broke from his chest. He laughed without restraint, and the coldness that usually held his features dissolved as if spring rain had reached frozen earth. He leaned some of his weight against me for the first time. His voice sounded utterly at ease. Help me back inside, and you may collect it. His uneven steps were too slow for my liking, so I squatted in front of him. Climb on, I will carry you. Do not let my size fool you. I am strong. Peiji hesitated, then finally leaned onto my back, his ears turning red. Inside, Song Tao went to fetch the silver. With nothing else to do, I tugged the red cord from beneath my collar and held up the green-grain jade pendant. Look, the gift you brought me from Jiangyan. I have worn it against my skin all this time. I took his hand and placed the pendant in his palm. Feel it. Has the jade grown smoother since you first sent it? His thumb moved over the stone, still warm from my body. His gaze deepened. I had not expected you to keep it so close. I answered as if the matter were obvious. You chose it for me with care, so of course I should care for it. Mother says affection between people lasts only when both sides treasure what the other gives. 2 years in a noble household had taught me enough to know how rare such clear jade was. I also knew how dangerous the salt smuggling case in Jiangyan had been. Even among blades and ambushes, he had remembered to find me a pendant whose meaning was peace, year after year. How could I treat such thought lightly? Then a thought struck me. I jerked my head up and stared at him. Wait, you had only met me once. I threw you on the ground, insulted your nostrils, and left you furious. Yet you still went to all that trouble to find such an expensive gift. Peiji, did you fall for me at first sight? My blunt question caught him unprepared. His lashes trembled as he tried to hide his discomfort. Number, you were far too young then. I would never have entertained such improper thoughts toward a girl who had scarcely grown. I only grandmother had already chosen you. I thought that if we were one day to share a roof, then perhaps I should give the matter some care. So that was all. He had been preparing for the future. Remembering how I had crawled from the pond looking like a drowned ghost, I laughed at myself. Love at first sight, hardly. He probably thought my head was cracked and took pity on me. The dowager often said Peiji had inherited the worst wounds of parents who spent their lives tormenting one another, and that love had become something he viewed with deep suspicion. He had once said, if I must marry, then let it at least be someone whose face can bring joy into my heart. I propped my chin on one hand and leaned closer with a smile. Peiji, you just said you had no such feelings for me back then. What about now? Why are you willing to court me now? He said nothing. He only looked at me, his fingers drifting unconsciously toward the sachet at his waist. I grinned and pierced straight through his silence. I understand. Peiji, when you look at me now, your heart feels glad, is that it? Color rose visibly across his face and down his neck. This time, he did not avoid my gaze. He gave one quiet, serious answer. Yes, delighted, I clasped my hands behind my back and paced around him like a tiger cub inspecting its territory. Then I patted his shoulder magnanimously. There is no need to be embarrassed. Plenty of people adore me. Father, mother, brother, sister, half of Peach Blossom Lane. Everyone says I am loved wherever I go. You are only one more among them. Nothing shameful about that." Peiji actually laughed at my shamelessness, and some of the color left his face. He looked at me helplessly. "Chen Qinghe, that is not the kind of liking I mean." What did he mean, this kind and that kind? Liking was liking. Could affection sprout separate branches like a plum tree? Song Tao returned with the 20 taels just then. My eyes lit up. I took the silver, tucked it securely into my clothes, and waved with great cheer. "Good, I have my money. Sister and I are due to spend the next half-month in Peach Blossom Lane. I shall see you in 15 days. At the threshold I remembered our newly made agreement and turned back. I grabbed his hand. "If you become bored here while I am away, perhaps." Peiji closed his hand around mine and cut me off in a tone that allowed no refusal. "I shall be bored. I am coming with you." When Peiji's discreet yet unmistakably luxurious carriage appeared before the cramped Chen courtyard in Peach Blossom Lane, the entire family learned the earth-shaking news that the two of us had decided to try courting. Mother sat beside the well-stripping water spinach, her face dark enough to summon thunder. The way she pinched each stem made it look suspiciously like a certain person's neck. Father stood with an axe raised over the chopping block, yet his eyes kept sliding toward Peiji. He had the expression of a farmer inspecting the boar about to root through his finest cabbage patch. Brother, wearing a faded apron, leaned halfway out of the kitchen with a cooking spatula in hand, looking ready to defend the house to the death. As for Wang Qing, she sat beside Mother peeling garlic. Her face was perfectly calm. Unfortunately, she had thrown the cloves into the slop bucket and arranged the skins neatly in the porcelain bowl. Peiji took in this tribunal like welcome without the slightest change of expression. He wheeled himself forward, reached for the vegetable basket in Mother's hands, and said gently, "Madam Chen, allow me to wash these for you." I heard that and felt heaven had opened a gate for me. "Mother," he offered to work of his own accord, "I shall go read the new volume of Young Heroes of the Martial World that I bought." Before Mother could explode, I gathered my skirts and vanished into my room, leaving behind only the cheerful back of a daughter entirely untouched by conscience. The courtyard fell so quiet that a dropped needle might have sounded like thunder. Father had never known how to hide a thought. He buried the axe in the chopping block and said gruffly, "Young lord, our Sweer has been spoiled since birth. She has never learned fear of heaven or earth and acts on whatever fancy seizes her. If she chooses to fool about, why would your lordship join her in it?" The words were rough, but their meaning was plain. To the Chens, this courtship was a play that might end at any moment. Wang Qing washed her hands, looked at Peiji, and spoke with cold precision. "My lord, you and I have known one another for years. We both know what sort of place a great noble residence can become when affection rots. We both know what your parents left inside you, and why you grew into a man so distant from warmth. Suicer is sunlight. You have lived too long in a chasm. If she draws too near, the cold around you may wound her. The two of you are not suited." On any other day, a person who laid bare Peiji's wounds so directly would have paid dearly. He commanded the Chilin Guard and had never been known for mercy when duty required blood. Yet now, faced with Wang Qing's merciless questions, he felt no anger at all. Her words were harsh, but every one of them had been spoken to protect Swear. What kind of childhood had he endured in the Qingzhou Marquis's residence? He had watched his mother order a favored concubine's pregnancy cruelly ended, smiling coldly while it was done. His father answered by drugging the tea of one of his mother's favorites and robbing the man of his voice. Hatred poisoned that splendid mansion from morning to night. If the dowager had not taken P.I.G. away and brought him back to the capital by force, he might eventually have become as broken as the people who raised him. Mother saw how pale he had grown and softened, despite herself. She sighed. "Young lord, forgive them." My husband and Wang Qing spoke too sharply because they loved Sawyer. Peiji sat in silence, his long fingers clenched around the cloak over his knees. After a long while, he raised his head and met the guarded eyes of the Chen family. "Uncle, aunt, cousin Wang Qing, I understand every concern you have. Then let us say that I am only accompanying Sweer in a game. If being with me makes her happy, I will do everything in my power to protect her and stay beside her. If one day she grows tired of me, or finds she no longer wishes to continue, she may leave. The engagement will end, and I will not cling to her. I will answer to the Yonging household myself. She will not suffer for it." The Chen stared at him. The heir to a marquisate had lowered himself farther than any of them expected, even accepting in advance that he might one day be cast aside. Mother frowned. "And what of you? What becomes of your heart?" Suyer has scarcely understood her own feelings, but you are a grown man who sees far more clearly than she does. You mean to give her your sincerity while pretending it is only play. If she walks away one day, how would the dowager bear to see you wounded? Father shifted awkwardly and scratched his head. "Young lord, that is not quite what we meant." Wang Qing studied the cousin who had once carried himself like a shadow made flesh. Though he held great power now beneath the robes and title, he was still a man who had spent too many years living as though already half dead. And if for Suyer, that stagnant heart had willingly bowed all the way to the dust. Peiji looked toward the tightly closed window of my room. A gentle smile touched his lips. "So long as Suyer is happy, what I feel matters least." He had thought it through. The engagement could remain private. Suyer could treat their courtship as something new and amusing. He would remain beside her as a brother might, as a guard might, until one day she truly understood the love between a man and a woman. And if she came to love someone else, he would place the bridal veil over her head with his own hands and watch her enter another man's wedding carriage. A strange silence settled over the courtyard. Then my window flew open with a creak. I leaned half my body outside, waving a piece of glaring red cloth. "Peiji, look! Is this bridal veil pretty? Mother started embroidering it last year. When we marry, I am going to wear this over my head." The entire Chen family drew a collective breath as they watched me grin in blissful ignorance. Their expressions contained enough mixed feeling to fill a wine cellar. Peiji did not answer at once. He waved Song Tao back, took the rosewood walking stick beside him, and rose with visible effort but absolute determination. Dragging his weaker left leg, he made his way step by stubborn step to the window. He looked up, took the veil from my hands, studied it carefully, and then said without warning, "Auntie's mandarin ducks look somewhat like two fat ducks bathing in a pond." My soul nearly left my body. I clapped a hand over his mouth and looked around in terror. "Quiet. I think they look like ducks too. But if Mother hears you, she truly will beat you with the broom." Not far away, Mother heard every word. She pressed a hand to her forehead and sighed. Father immediately hurried over to soothe his wife. Wang Qing linked an arm through Mother's and murmured, "Do not be angry, Mother. I will keep a close eye on little sister." Mother looked at the two of us whispering beneath the window, one standing and one leaning down, and the last knot of worry in her heart slowly loosened. Very well, Suyer would understand her own heart some day. And if Peiji, steady and mature, with eyes for no one but her, wished to stand between her and the storms of the world, perhaps that was not such a terrible thing. "Food is ready," Brother bellowed from the kitchen. At the word food, my ears immediately pricked up. I planted both hands on the sill, swung myself out of the window with long practice, and landed neatly beside Peiji. "Quick, quick." I pushed him back into his chair and raced him toward the dining room. "Brother's braised pork is the finest in the whole lane. If we are late, Father will eat every piece." Peiji's ears turned scarlet as I pushed him at reckless speed under the stunned eyes of the Chen family. The famously cold commander of the Killing Guard could do nothing but cling to what remained of his dignity. Another spring came, warm and green, with birds calling over new grass. Wang Qing had revealed an extraordinary gift for medicine. The year before, she began seeing patients beside Mother at the apothecary. Now she had passed the examinations of the Imperial Medical Bureau and become a court medical officer devoted to healing the sick. Brother earned a high place in the spring examinations and received a post in the Ministry of Works. Father solved several major cases in succession and was promoted to Chief Constable of the capital prefecture. As for me, I continued receiving my 20 taels each month and had Peiji's holdings flourishing under my hands. One afternoon I stood beside the pond tossing feet into the water and watched the fat koi fight for every pellet. I sighed with rare melancholy. Peiji stood nearby and turned toward me. His voice was warm and calm. "You are in the finest years of your youth. Your road is still long. There is no need to decide everything at once. When I first took command of the Chillingard, had my uncle not forced me out into the world, I might still be locked in my courtyard counting fallen leaves and waiting for life to end." I whirled on him. "Spit that away, quickly, spit twice. Why speak of dying on such a fine day? You are going to live 100 years. If you die, who will give me 20 taels on time every month?" Peiji lowered his eyes. His long fingers curled slightly and rubbed the moon-white cloth at his sleeve. I knew that little movement far too well by then. Generously, I held out my hand. "Here, you may hold it." A victorious smile touched his mouth. He took my hand at once and threaded his fingers through mine, palm warm against palm. He checked the sky and tugged him toward the gate. "Come along, Princess Jing'an is holding a flower feast today. The cooks at her residence make the finest blossom cakes in the capital. I have been thinking about them for an entire year." For more than a year, Mother had treated Peiji's left leg with acupuncture and medicinal baths. It still could not move as freely as an ordinary leg, but so long as he did not hurry, he could walk with only a slight limp. I had always walked as if the wind were chasing me. Strange thing though, with Peiji, I never seemed to run out of patience. Sometimes when he moved too slowly, I fluttered ahead to inspect flowers or bother the birds, only to circle back to his side a moment later. Even if I wandered farther away, I never worried. I knew that if I stopped and waited, Peiji would always come toward me, one steady step at a time. At Prince Jing'an's residence, Wang Qing and I went first to the warm pavilion in the inner court for tea, while Peiji greeted the prince in the front hall. The pavilion was full of noble young ladies and bright conversation. I was happily biting into a rose pastry when a sugary voice rose several notes too high, clearly meant for the entire room to hear. "Sister Li, you have such a good eye. This white jade bracelet is an antique from the former dynasty. One could offer 1,000 gold pieces and never find another." I turned toward the voice and frowned immediately. Lin Rong, the daughter born to that sanctimonious hypocrite Lin Zheng and Lu Wanyin. In name, she was the younger half-sister Wang Qing, and I shared. Years ago, Lin Zheng had pursued my birth mother, the legitimate daughter of a wealthy ministerial household, because he wanted her family's fortune all the while. He had already kept Lu Wanyin elsewhere and fathered Lin Rong with her. When my birth mother grew gravely ill, Lin Zheng stopped even pretending at decency and brought Lu Wanyin openly into the house with honors nearly equal to a lawful wife Wang Qing. Once told me the whole filthy tale. I was so angry I did not sleep properly for 3 nights. Finally, I paid 2 night soil carriers to pour 2 enormous buckets of their foulest cargo over the front gate of the Lin residence. Lin Zheng reported the insult to the authorities in a rage. Thanks to a generous fee here, and some quiet help from brother there, the culprit remained forever unknown. Wang Qing set down her tea, her eyes fixed on the bracelet around Lin Rong's wrist. Her voice was low, but every word was clear. That belonged to my mother. It was part of her dowry. When our birth mother died, Wang Qing took only a small portion of that dowry with her to the Yongning residence. Lin Zheng had kept most of the rare treasures behind under one excuse after another. Now Lin Rong dared parade through a noble gathering wearing the dead lawful wife's own possessions. I put down my pastry and brushed the crumbs from my fingers. "Sister, stay here. You are now an officer of the Imperial Medical Bureau. Your reputation matters. Do not let a creature like that drag mud across it." I had no reputation worth polishing. I was not seeking a court appointment, and I had no intention of cultivating some spotless image of meek virtue so that a grand house might marry me. Why in heaven's name would I fear her? I rose, smoothed my skirt, and marched across the room. While Lin Rong was still displaying the bracelet, I caught her wrist, and with one sharp movement pulled the white jade straight from her hand. She froze, then shrieked, "Chen Qinghe! Have you gone mad? You dare rob me in broad daylight." I turned the bracelet lazily between my fingers. "Who is robbing whom? If I ever see you again wearing my mother's dowry as though it were your own, I shall drag you to the capital magistrate myself. Let everyone in the city judge how the Lin family preyed on a dead wife's estate and stripped her daughters of their inheritance." The noble ladies around us exchanged looks. None openly took my side, but the contempt in their eyes said enough. Every great household had its private filth, but favoring a concubine over the lawful wife and stealing that wife's dowry after her death was beneath even the lowest standards of respectable society. Lin Rong's face changed from blue to white. Tears sprang instantly to her eyes, and she transformed herself into a trembling flower wronged by the whole world. Then someone cried, "The Yonging heir is here!" The murmuring pavilion fell silent. The moment Lin Rong saw Peiji enter, she clutched at the chance like a drowning woman. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she pointed at me. "My lord, do not let Chen Qinghe deceive you. Everyone in the capital knows she was raised among common streets. She despises your injured legs, but she covets the power of the Yonging house. That is why she keeps you dangling without giving you a proper answer. She is using you as a stair to climb into noble society." The room went still enough to hear breathing. The looks turned toward me changed. My heart sank. Was this how people spoke of me when I was not there? And Peiji in their eyes, was he merely a pitiful cripple being led about by a scheming woman? Wenqing rose at once and came to my side, closing her hand around my suddenly cold fingers. Lin Rong mistook my silence for weakness. She looked toward Peiji with coy sympathy. "My lord, I saw you and Chen Qinghe sharing a pleasure boat on Westlake with my own eyes. You were far too intimate. If she had not deliberately enticed you, how could a man of your judgment have been deceived?" Peiji's brows drew together. His face turned dangerously cold. He stepped forward, Miss Chen and I caught his wrist before he could continue. Then I drew a deep breath, turned around, lifted my chin, and let my voice ring through the entire pavilion. "The heir and I were formally betrothed 3 years ago. Our families exchanged the proper papers. We are promised husband and wife before both households." Lin Rong stared at me in disbelief. Around us, women drew sharp breaths. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I did not retreat. "Eno of your poison." "What do you mean? I keep him dangling." "What do you mean? I enticed him. I like Pijiji. I like the man himself. His injured leg has nothing to do with it, and neither does the power of the Yonging house. We are properly betrothed. If we choose to share a boat, admire lotus flowers, or sit together beneath the moon, what concern is it of yours?" The instant I said those words aloud, the wild beating in my chest became strangely calm. I repeated it silently. "I like Peiji, Chen Qinghe, truly like Peiji." Each time, the truth became clearer. Beside me, Peiji turned his hand and locked his fingers tightly through mine, gripping hard enough that my knuckles ached. I began to pull him away from that foul room. After 2 steps, anger surged through me again. I turned around, marched back to Lin Rong, lifted my foot, and planted it squarely on the toe of her embroidered shoe. She screamed and doubled over. I looked down at her. That was for Lord Pei. The next time you spit that word cripple at him, you had better remember how fond you are of keeping your tongue. Under the horrified stares of the noble ladies, I took Peiji by the hand and strode out with my head high. I did not stop until we reached a quiet rock garden deep within the prince's residence. Then Peiji turned the matter around and drew me toward him. His dark eyes held mine. His voice was slightly hoarse. "Swear you did not need to say those things before everyone merely to protect my pride. You know I care little for empty reputation." Wenqing once told me the great families of the capital guarded reputation more fiercely than treasure. Yet Peiji had willingly spent years indulging my nonsense without demanding status, promise, or reward. I looked up at his far too handsome face and asked something that seemed to have nothing to do with the quarrel. "Peiji, have you always believed that when I said we should try courting, I was only playing, that I never truly imagined sharing the rest of my life with you?" His lashes trembled. He looked away. "So long as you are beside me now, the rest does not matter." The more gently he said it, the more my heart ached. I thought for a moment, rose on my toes, and pressed a quick kiss to his lips. Pagey froze as though an immortal had cast a binding spell over his whole body. The touch was surprisingly pleasant, so I kissed the corner of his mouth too. Then the other corner. Then one more for fairness. When I leaned in again, Pagey finally lost his restraint. One hand came behind my head, the other circled my waist, and he kissed me with years of carefully buried longing breaking free all at once. When at last we parted, we rested our foreheads together and listened to both our hearts pounding like war drums. I looked at him with a smile I could not hide. Pagey, I think I truly do like you. When he kissed me, I had not disliked it even a little. My heart had turned sweeter than honey, thinking back over our time together. I saw 100 quiet things when I wanted to brew peach blossom wine. He searched old books until he found the finest recipe. When I wanted lotus seed pods from the imperial lake, he took a small boat out with me and brewed cooling tea at the bow in winter. While I built snowmen and fought snow battles in the courtyard, he waited beneath the eaves with a hand warmer, so my frozen fingers would have somewhere warm to return. Nothing between us resembled the romances in storybooks, with wars, separations, and lovers nearly dying for one another. But whenever I turned around, Pagey was there, giving me a tenderness and patience that asked for nothing in return. His fingertips brushed my burning cheek. His voice dropped low. Swear, I have wanted to do that for a very long time. I rubbed my cheek against his palm with great generosity. Very well, since you have behaved so admirably, I permit you 3 more touches today. Pagey laughed softly and drew me into his arms. Your brother told me you dreamed since childhood of a love from the old romances, thunderous enough to shake heaven and earth. I am not an exciting man. Are you certain a life with me will not feel too quiet? I considered that seriously, then looked up from his chest and announced with heroic confidence, That is easily solved. If you are too quiet, then I shall love you loudly enough for both of us. It seems that old monk at the temple of 10,000 Buddhas truly did see clearly. We are a perfect match. Pagey stiffened. After a moment, he decided confession was wiser than concealment. Swear, there is something I must tell you. When the old abbot declared us a heaven-made match, he did so because I donated 100 taels to the temple and persuaded him to say it. I only wanted the engagement arranged first. I thought that if time passed and you were unwilling, grandmother would allow it to end. I stared at him. So there was no heaven-made match at all. He watched my face nervously. You are not angry that I deceived you. Angry about what? A sheet of betrothal paper. I had leapt into that trap willingly for 20 taels a month. In the years since, I had earned excellent silver, learned real skill in managing property and accounts, and somehow gained a handsome, attentive betrothed besides. By any arithmetic known to man, I had won. I looked around, made sure no one was nearby, and leaned toward his ear. Enough worrying. If we both like one another, let us choose an auspicious day and marry. Pagey seemed to forget to breathe. So soon you are certain? I nodded so quickly. I nearly rattled my hairpins loose. Certain, entirely certain. Then, with the air of a thief revealing stolen treasure, I pulled a neatly folded sheet from my sleeve. Look, I borrowed this page from one of Father's forbidden illustrated marriage manuals. I have long been curious about the bridal chamber, but Mother swore that if I ever behaved improperly before marriage, she would break my legs. So, for the preservation of my legs, we plainly must marry at once. Pagey looked at the far too instructive illustration. His expression became indescribable, and his ears turned bright red. So that is your reasoning, I suppose. It is not entirely unsound. Still he held my face in both hands and asked once more, almost afraid of the answer. Swear, do you truly like me as a woman loves the man she wishes to make her husband? I followed his gaze downward and frowned in confusion. You are a man, are you not? Why did he always ask questions whose answers sat directly in front of him? Pagey closed his eyes, drew a slow breath, and sighed through his teeth. Never mind, I chose the wrong person to ask. The moment we returned to Peach Blossom Lane, and I loudly announced that I intended to marry Pagey at once, Mother grabbed the feather duster behind the door and charged. I fled with my arms over my head. Paige, say something. I have not even had the chance to enjoy being properly married yet, and Mother is already trying to kill her own daughter. Mother caught me by the ear. You shameless girl, what scandalous nonsense have you been saying to the young lord outside this house? Paige immediately stepped between us and protected me behind his back. His face was utterly serious. Madam Chen, please calm yourself. Sweer and I have considered marriage carefully. I spat out a feather that had flown into my mouth and complained to Father. Father, buy a new duster at the market tomorrow. Every time Mother chases me with this one, I feel as though an ancient hen spirit is trying to possess me. Father barely heard me. He looked dazed. You used to run around with your hair tied in 2 little buns. How did I blink? And suddenly you are getting married. Brother's eyes reddened too. You are so careless about everything. What if your husband's household bullies you? Perhaps you should not marry at all. Stay here and torment me instead. They all looked as though they were attending my funeral rather than arranging a wedding. I waved a hand. Why is marriage so different from now? I shall still spend half the month managing the Yonging accounts and half the month in Peach Blossom Lane. The only new part is that Paige and I will be husband and wife. At that critical moment, Wang Qing returned carrying a thick stack of legal petitions. Paige seized the opportunity to redirect everyone's attention. Madam Chen, there is another matter today, and it is far more urgent. It concerns my late aunt. Wang Qing slammed the petitions onto the stone table. Her eyes were sharp as knives. Mother, I struck the drum of appeal at the Court of Judicial Review. I am accusing Minister of Rights Lin Zheng of violating his lawful marriage, seizing his wife's property, and causing her death for gain. For 3 years, Paige had used every hidden line of the Qilin Guard. At last, in a remote town in Zhongyan, his men found the old woman who had prepared Madame Lin's medicine all those years ago. With the crucial witness and the evidence Wang Qing had quietly gathered of Lin Zheng transferring and concealing the dowry, the court spent 2 months examining the old case until the truth emerged piece by piece. The evidence held. Lin Zheng was stripped of office. His unlawfully gained property was confiscated, and his household was sentenced to exile at the northern frontier. 3 days after the case ended, I dragged Paige off to marry me. There was no procession stretching 10 streets and no hall packed with guests. I despised needless ceremony and hated being stared at. Paige disliked noise even more, and he had no wish to spend his wedding enduring looks of pity or judgment because of his uneven gait. So we dressed simply, went before the capital registry, signed the marriage contract in the presence of the proper official, and became husband and wife-in-law. Then we walked hand in hand back to my rooms in Kangshan Court. That night, I changed into a wedding robe red as flame. Paige, for once, wore deep crimson instead of moon white. Beneath the wavering light of the dragon and phoenix candles, we drank the ceremonial cups with arms entwined. I rubbed my hands together, patted the bed, and grinned at him. Paige, people say a wedding night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. We should not waste it. He took a slow breath, extinguished the bright wedding candles, and let the red curtains fall around the bed. The room softened into warm shadow. Sometime later, 2 newlyweds discovered that old romance tales were far less useful than they claimed. Paige, are we doing this properly? I was about to ask you the same question. Wait, I stole several more pages from Father's marriage manual. Light the lamp, we require scholarship. With a helpless sigh, Paige lit the small bedside lantern again. There we sat in our inner robes, heads nearly touching, studying the illustrated manual with the grave concentration of 2 scholars preparing for the imperial examination. Paige pointed to one particularly ambitious illustration. His voice had gone suspiciously rough. Swear, perhaps this page is trying to tell us something useful. I stared at it and felt my face blaze. Useful. That looks like a fine way to ruin one's back. He said nothing more. The lamp went dark again. The rest of the lesson we learned without the book. Much later, the room had gone quiet. I lay sprawled beneath the embroidered quilt, warm, drowsy, and deeply satisfied with married life. Marriage is far more pleasant than I expected. I should have hauled you to the wedding hall sooner. Paige gathered me close. He kissed my forehead. my brow, and the tip of my nose with a tenderness so careful it made my chest ache. I rolled toward him, held his handsome face between both hands, and asked, "Peji, do you like me very, very, very much now?" He laughed softly, took one of my hands, and pressed it over the place where his heart beat hardest. "Chen Chinghi," he said low and solemn, as though speaking a sacred vow. "It is not liking, it is love." Love, I blinked. Something feather-light brushed the softest place in my heart. Then I tucked my face against his warm chest and closed my eyes, entirely content. The next morning, for the first time in my life, I slept until the sun stood high. When I woke, Peji was already washed and dressed, sitting beside the bed and watching me with quiet affection. Then Mother's voice came from outside the door, frighteningly calm beneath tightly restrained anger. "Chen Chinghi, have you grown so comfortable you have forgotten what a scolding sounds like? Get out here." I jolted upright and scrambled into my clothes. Peji helped fasten my sash while murmuring, "Do not be afraid whatever mother-in-law says. I will stand with you." I drew a deep breath, threw open the door, gathered all my courage, and let my knees fold. Thump, I slid smoothly to the floor before Mother and raised both hands above my head. "Mother, I was wrong. If you must strike me, kindly avoid the face. I have accounts to inspect tomorrow." Mother lifted her hand. I squeezed my eyes shut. The blow never came. She only tapped my palm lightly and pulled me upright, her voice filled with helpless affection. "You foolish girl, you are a married woman now. Do you truly think your mother still has the heart to beat you?" She smoothed the loose hair beside my temple. "Since you dislike grand celebrations, I allowed you your quiet wedding, but everyone in Peach Blossom Lane watched you grow up. Today, you must take your husband home and hand out wedding sweets so the neighbors can share the joy." Bright early summer sunlight broke through the clouds and warmed my face. Peji came to my side and took my hand as naturally as breathing. A breeze moved through the peach tree outside the gate, sending pale pink petals drifting down around us. Beyond the courtyard stood father, mother, brother, and Wang Qing, all gathered together with happiness shining openly on their faces. While everyone else was distracted, Peji bent and stole a kiss from my cheek. I looked at my noisy, ordinary, wonderfully alive family ahead of me and felt the warmth of the man I loved flowing through our joined hands. Something inside my chest swelled until I could no longer contain it. I drew one enormous breath, lifted my face toward the blue sky, and shouted at the top of my lungs, "I Chen Chinghi am ridiculously happy in this life." The cry startled my parents' brother and Wang Qing so badly that they all turned at once. They stared at my shameless grin for half a heartbeat. Then every one of them burst out laughing. Under their teasing eyes, Peiji's ears turned red yet again. He tried to endure it, failed, and finally bent down before everyone to kiss my cheek once more, slowly and with all the care in the world. The story ends with a yell so loud it startles the whole family, a stolen kiss under falling peach blossoms, and a woman declaring herself ridiculously happy at the top of her lungs. It is hilarious. It is chaotic. It is exactly the kind of romance I needed this week. But the moment that cracks the story open isn't the betrothal or the revenge or the wedding night spent studying a marriage manual like two scholars prepping for the imperial exam. It is this line: "Love was not a well that ran dry when shared. It was spring water. The more that gathered, the deeper it became." Watch what the story does. Chen Qinghe is told her entire identity is wrong, that she is not the Chen's daughter by blood, that her real mother is dead, that her family has been a legal error for 2 decades. And the Chen's response isn't to weigh blood against history. It is to panic at the thought of losing her. Her father, the gruff chief constable, shows up red-eyed and shouts, "Swear is going nowhere." Her mother negotiates 3 escape clauses into the engagement before she'll even consider it. Her brother, her poor fleeced brother, would rather keep being tormented by her than let her marry into a house that might not understand her chaos. The blood daughter, Wang Qing, makes a different choice. She stays with the Marquis's household to investigate her mother's death, but she also starts calling the Chen's mother and father immediately, not out of obligation, but because she refuses to wait for permission to belong to them. And here is what the story knows that the switched at birth trope often forgets. Family isn't something you are assigned. It is something you choose to practice daily. The Chens could have seen Chen Qinghee as a living reminder of their lost daughter. Instead, they saw her as their daughter, whose favorite foods, bad habits, and shameless scams they knew by heart. That is not an accident of blood. That is 2 decades of showing up, and Peiji, he doesn't win Swayer by being the most powerful or the most passionate. He wins her because he never asks her to change. He lets her be loud, greedy, ridiculous, and ambitious. He doesn't trap her in his world, he enters hers. He learns her family's names, eats her brother's braised pork, tolerates her climbing walls and counting his koi like menu items. The old abbot didn't declare them a match because of destiny. Peiji bribed him to say it, and then spent years making the lie true through patience, respect, and an absolutely unreasonable tolerance for his wife's chaos. That is the real love story here. Not fate, not passion. 2 people choosing each other every day, including the parts that are inconvenient. One question for you. Who are you choosing? Not by blood, not by obligation, not by proximity, but by the daily practice of showing up for someone exactly as they are. And who has been choosing you back so quietly that you forgot to notice? Tell me in the comments. I am Xiao Yu Mei. Every switched life find the right people anyway. May every koi pond survive its most devoted admirer. And may you never ever mistake an accident of blood for the only family you'll ever have. See you in the next story.